Hey everybody, it's Stereo Police. And as you can see, I received the Pioneer HPM 100s. They're in very good shape as promised. Circa 1980. The veneer is in excellent shape. Feels great, no major chips or dings. The grill cloths are in very good shape. These are original. They don't feel plastic. They're cold, so they're you touch them and they're cold, so they're aluminum. The logos, the HPM 100 logos are aluminum. No pokies in the grills. This particular grill seems to have a discoloration. Right here, it looks like some water got on it at some point. I don't really care much about that. Very nice binding, old school type push-in spring-loaded binding posts on the back. Just capable of receiving bare wire. They're smaller than I remember. They're not big speakers. See if I can remove the grills with one hand. All in all, excellent shape, as you can see. Woofers are beautiful. The corrugated surround, excellent shape. The woofer material, I forget what it's made out of, but it's just really, it shines. It's got a glitter to it. It's interesting. The front face, no discolorations, no stains, no scratches. The mid-range is beautiful. I mean, no kids have been around these, no children have been around these speakers for sure. Tweeters, the polymer super tweeter, great shape. There are the potentiometers for adjusting the mid-range and high frequencies. So all in all, in very good shape. I'm happy. Very happy with them. And because I've been listening for a couple of days, that's what I've been doing instead of continuing on with the speaker boxing matches. I was happy to get these and I wanted to give them a listen. Been doing that. Therefore, the next fight will be the Klipschorns versus the Pioneer HPM 100s. But before I get started with that, a couple of things. You're going to want me to get the tripod for this. Alrighty, so just to recap. In fight one, Butterbean Klipschorn versus Fearless Fostex. It was a tie through 6 rounds, and Mrs. Police had to be the deciding factor. A civilian had to decide, and the winner was Butterbean Klipschorn. Okay, we have to accept that and move on. Now, one thing I wanted to answer real quick, and some of you may want to fast forward through this, but I had a question, not a question, a comment from a user, a viewer, that the person didn't understand the reason or the need or what have you for the weights up here, the weights. Well, just to re-explain a couple things. First of all, let me say this. The whole purpose of this is, it's kind of a combination of sort of self-deprecating humor. Just to explain overall, I made a colossal mistake. I purchased some speakers without listening to them. It's my fault. I think they're not very good. Klipschorns, by the way. I rather don't like them. I think they're a terrible value. I'm trying to determine through this I'm trying to make light of it the best I can. I'm trying not to make a mockery. This is not me making a mockery of this. This is actually me discovering whether or not I want to keep them. At the same time, trying to be a bit humorous about it, but also educational and provide information, but in a way that can also be lighthearted and maybe somewhat humorous, perhaps. I'm not a comedian, obviously, and I'm not an entertainer, obviously. I'm just a regular guy like everyone else, every other amateur out there that makes videos. So, you know, I'm not a pro, obviously. I don't like using the word obviously because nothing is really obvious to everybody, but I think in this case it's obvious that I'm not a pro. But I'm trying to be lighthearted about this whole process, yet provide valuable information. But I'm not trying to make a mockery of this. I'm trying to be serious. And I really am being truthful as I go through this process, and I'm comparing speakers. I'm not misleading anybody. I'm being absolutely truthful in my observations. And back to answering the questions. Through this process, I thought it would be fun and yet helpful to have a boxing analogy to compare the speakers. I know most of you already know this, unless you chimed in late. And the rounds are me listening to some songs that are just randomly sampled off a playlist one night, and the speakers are individuals. And individuals in boxing tend to be identified by virtue of their weight, origin, age, titles, etc. And a weight is a defining factor in boxing. Heavyweights, you know, a person with more weight has a major advantage. They tend to have more size, more heft behind, you know, more force behind their punches. They tend to be taller, bigger all around. You know, generally a heavyweight could probably normally kick the shit out of a flyweight. Normally. So that's why there are weight classes. And the same holds with speakers. You would think that, generally speaking, the more you spend on the speaker, the more technology would be packed into the speaker, the more care, the more production, the more engineering, the better quality materials, the list goes on. You get the idea. So I'm analogizing price to weight. So how do you do that? Now here's where I'm going to go off on a major tangent here, just for the dude who didn't understand. See, this is how much I care about my listeners. Just for the guy who didn't understand why or the need for the weight or where it came from. So, I'm going to explain, because I never fully explained. And again, you can fast forward. The fast forward button has been enabled for this video. Okay. The equation for weight equals 112 plus 0.02 times the price of the speaker. By the way, the weight for the current fight, Butterbean Klipschorn versus Pioneer HPM, the weight for the Pioneers is 132 pounds. That's based on the price being roughly $1,000 a pair. I came up with that number by searching past sales of Pioneer HPM 100s in good shape on eBay, like two or three past sales, kind of averaged them together in my brain. Roughly $1,000 a pair. That's not what I spent, but I'm not getting into what I spent, but because that's irrelevant. But I'm just averaging what eBay, you know, the past several. You get the idea. So about $1,000 a pair in today's dollars. So it adds up to about 132 pounds. Versus the 412-pound behemoth Butterbean Klipschorn. Now, where did this equation come from and why did I do it? Well, I'm trying to map. Hold on just a second. Let me get a blank sheet of paper here. Linearly map price to weight, of, you know, reasonable weight of human beings, and I could do it non-linearly using, for example, the equation, a logarithm, you know, 1 over x squared, or a natural log, or a logarithm, but I'm going to linearly map price to weight. So for example, if I have down here price of $100 up to $10,000. And I want to map these to reasonable weights you might expect humans to fall into. I might say 100 pounds and 300 pounds. And so all along, anywhere from $100 to $10,000, all along this line, each of these points maps to a weight somewhere between 100 pounds and 300 pounds. So, how do I do that given the parameters that I have? Well, here's the parameters that I have. My current heavyweight champion is Klipschorn Wall 3s at roughly $4,400 a pair, and the heavyweight division is 200 pounds. So I already have a point on my line. So I'm going to draw. This is way too much information, but I'm doing it just for you guys. This is a line. Here's X, and here's the Y axis. I already have a point on the line. I'm going to call the X axis price. I'm going to call the Y axis weight. Okay? We're back to school, everybody. I'm your math teacher right here. So right here, the Cornwall 3s were $4,400 a pair, and the weight for the, I need to force them into being a heavyweight at the threshold at 200 pounds. So we have a point on our line already. Now, I need to force, we already have a point on the line, but I need at least one more point on this line, because, you know, I can draw an infinite number of lines through a point, like that. So I need one more point to fix this line right here, to map all those points in between. Well, that one more point I'm going to draw on the y-axis, and that is our y-intercept. And that's going to be at price point 0. See, this is price point 4,400. If I keep going down the x-axis to price point 0, that'll be the minimum weight of any human being. That's a free set of speakers. And I want that to map to the minimum weight. Obviously, a human being cannot be 0 weight, pounds. That would be unreasonable. So it's the minimum weight I would expect a person to be in a boxing match. So I chose 112 pounds in my equation. So 0 maps to 112 pounds. That's our y-intercept. Now I've got 2 points, and I've got a line that's fixed. So now I need an equation that I can put in prices and come up with any weight on this line in between and above and beyond. How do I come up with that equation? Well, the equation of a line is y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, and b is the y-intercept. We already have the y-intercept right there. It's 112. Now I need to find the slope. The slope of a line is the rise over the run. Here's the rise, there's the run. The rise is 200 minus 112, the run is 4,400. So if I take 200 minus 12 divided by 4,400, I get 0.02. So the slope is 0.02. Our equation for the line equals 0.02 times x plus 112. Guess what, guys? It's essentially what we have for weight. Weight equals 112 plus 0.02 times price. Now I can poke in any x, which is price, and come up with a weight. For example, the Klipschorns, I can poke in, where's my calculator, damn it? I can poke in for the Klipschorns on this scale right here. Way out here would be $15,000. Would map to some weight way up here. So let's do it. $15,000 times 0.02 times 0.02 equals plus 112 equals 412 pounds. Guess what? 412 pounds is the weight of Butterbean Klipschorn. You follow me? So this equation, so that's a reasonable weight. I mean, people can be 412 pounds. That's pretty fat. And by the way, the real fighter, Butterbean, was up in that range. Hence, Butterbean Klipschorn. Get it? Now, back to the person who made the comment. They didn't understand why the need for the weight and where it came from. I hope you're thoroughly satiated to the annoyance of the rest of my subscribers. Back to the fight. Today, Butterbean Klipschorn against Pioneer HPM 100. I'm going to place a bet. Now, I have listened. I have the benefit of having listened to the Pioneer HPM 100 for 2 nights in a row. I've probably listened to about 50 songs. Diverse. Actually, let me correct that, not diverse. I've not listened to analog. I've listened to about 50 or so songs through the TIAC, all digital. I will say this about the Pioneer. The Pioneer HPM, I'm going to draw a frequency response. The Pioneer, the bass appears to be a little humpy, a little peaked, and it's deep. It goes deep. And then I hear a big bloomy mid-range, and I hear what I seem to perceive as a tapered off treble. Now this is with the potentiometer set flat for mid and highs. Now, what I'm hearing does not sound flat. It sounds reasonable, but I'm hearing kind of the most interesting artifact is this peak in the mid-range. Vocals are extremely prominent through this thing, through the HPMs. And on some songs, it's really pleasing that the vocals are prominent, and on other songs, it's rather annoying. And I don't know whether that can be a fatiguing factor long term, and I don't know what to make of it. And I'm telling you this ahead of time. I have not started the competition yet. I'm also noticing that the highs are quite the opposite of the Klipschorn. The highs are shelved down, subdued, and lacking micro detail, lacking resolution. And my observation about the Pioneer HPMs is this is, while I love it, it's a classic speaker, it is not a high fidelity speaker. It's a mid-fi speaker. That's my observation going into the fight. Now, so I'm telling you this before you guys start placing your bets. I don't want anyone to lose their ass. Let me recap one more thing about Butterbean. Hold on a second. Let's recap the strengths and weaknesses of Butterbean. Butterbean has glass treble. This is what was revealed from the previous fight. Glass treble with the right punch to the upper cabinet, he might be knocked out. Hasn't happened yet. It's a possibility. Butterbean has weak mid bass. At least it's perceived thus far. Inconsistent coherency that could lead to fatigue in the later rounds if it lasts that long. Strengths, well, Butterbean has strong punchy bass when up against the ropes, i.e. the wall, and fetadive the correct equipment. Lightning speed in the mid and treble jabs. Bursts of dynamic flurries that can knock an opponent out. It's the best way, in my limited knowledge of boxing terms, that I can describe the strengths and weaknesses of Butterbean. So knowing this and going against Pioneer HPM, I always place a bet with myself. A gentleman's bet, because I don't want to lose my ass to myself. I'm betting that there'll be a knockout or a technical knockout. I'm betting there'll be a TKO by the 5th round. Because my perception has been, again, that the Pioneers are not a high fidelity speaker. They're a piece of history. I'm happy that I have them, but that's where the story ends. That's after 2 nights of listening. I'm sad to say. I wish they sounded a little bit better. I don't know, by the way, if anyone who's a HPM 100 fan is listening. I just received them. I have no clue if perhaps there's something wrong with the crossovers. Maybe they need to be recapped. I don't know what's going on internally to them. I'm listening to them straight out of the box. But they both are consistent. They're both speakers sound exactly the same. They came from an original owner, a person with a good reputation. And they're in immaculate shape. I don't know what to tell you. They sound decent. I've been listening to them 2 nights. I haven't turned them off. But there are, you know, from a person with, you know, when I've heard a lot of speakers over a lifetime, and, you know, if I heard these in a store, if I heard them as if I was considering purchasing speakers and I heard these, I would walk away. If you get my drift. Okay. We're going to do the competition. All right. Round 1. I'm starting out with the Pioneer HPMs. I'm switching over to the Klipschorns, to Butterbean Klipschorn, Butterbean K-horns, beginning with the HPMs. Man Machine, Kraftwerk. Round 1 begins. Okay, partway into round 1, the HPMs have nice, tight, deep enough bass. Not to the nth degree, but it's there. It's doing justice to the song. I sense that shelved down treble a little bit. I sense a lack of dynamics. And I just sense that mid-fi sound that I discussed earlier. It's just, you know, I've heard this song through the Klipschorns already, and I'm just not sure. I'm ready to switch over to the Klipschorns, but it sounds decent. But this is a competition of relative comparison, so I'm ready to switch over to the K-horns and see how well the HPMs stack up. Okay, it's very, very evident that in the bass department, it's not even close. This particular song, which was chosen by chance, it's electronic, but the bass, while it's not slam bass, it's breathable, very, very deep, some very deep resonant bass notes down to the low 30s, perhaps mid 20s hertz regions. And it's bass you can feel and bass you can sense. And the Pioneers could not reproduce that aspect of the bass. The Klipschorns could. The Pioneer bass was present, but not I'm at a loss for words. You couldn't feel it. You could hear it, but you couldn't feel it. and you couldn't sense it the same way you could with the Klipschorns. The Klipschorn's bass, this song right here really draws your attention to the bass. And Klipschorns, relative to the HPMs, did an awesome job reproducing those bass notes, and with more accuracy. The Pioneer was, I'd say, muddy compared to the Klipsch down there. And again, box-like, whereas Klipsch, no box. One of their strengths, no box. Another aspect was the high frequencies. The Klipsch are just so detailed, so dynamic and crisp, so refined in the treble area. The HPMs are just so lo-fi with respect to the treble. It just wasn't even close, and I would I'm reluctant to say near technical knockout. I'm just going to say this firmly goes down, round one firmly goes down to the Klipschorn, to Butterbean Klipschorn. And let's go to round two, Rise by Public Image Limited, and keep going here. Okay, I'm just seconds into the song Rise. I'm 49 seconds into it. I started out with the Klipschorns and I switched over to the HPMs, and immediately, okay, the Klipschorns, the song sounded great. Nice, crisp, realistic, accurate sounding hi-hats. The vocals were great. There was a nice bass kick there, kick drum. Had a dimensional quality to it. The whole had a three-dimensional quality to the sound. And as soon as I switched over to the HPMs, it was veiled and very one-dimensional, and I couldn't even hear the hi-hats anymore. I could barely hear them. And the vocals were emphasized, but the bass kind of muddy, and the treble just no detail. So again, we're comparing a paper cone tweeter from 1980 to a modern, refined compression driver horn combination. As much as I have issues with it, it's still modern and still, I've told you, one of the strengths of the mid-range, of the Klipschorn mid-range as well as tweeter. One of their strengths are micro detail. And that micro detail is kicking ass right now. So again, HPM sounds veiled and one-dimensional relative to the Klipschorn. This round was nearly a technical knockout. Perhaps I'd say saved by the bell. I'm going to listen to more of the song, but I don't really think I need to hear much more. I want to hear one more song to make a decision here before I can declare maybe a knockout. This is firmly Klipsch. Firmly Klipschorn right here. And the next song is Voices Inside My Head by The Police, one of my standards for judging bass slam. Let's see what's going on in that department. Ladies and gentlemen, 45 seconds into round three, we have a knockout. Making notes here. Butterbean Klipschorn has knocked out the Pioneer HPM. Again, Pioneer HPM is 132 pounds, Butterbean is 412 pounds. Pioneer hails from Japan, I forgot to mention that. Butterbean, Arkansas. Pioneer is an old man, Butterbean is a spring chicken. But So I would advise Butterbean not to be so proud of this. Nothing to be proud of here. Nothing surprising. But it was a knockout. A rather easy win for Butterbean as Butterbean advances up through the ranks here. Why? Well, I'll tell you what. Right off the bat, the first thing that jumped out at me was that the HPMs, again, sounded flat and very box-like. As soon as Voices Inside My Head came on, it was the first speaker I listened to was the HPM. I heard the box. And I heard a boxy quality to it. Almost a nasally quality to the port, sort of, if that makes any sense. Even though there wasn't singing, the bass sounded nasally and congested. If that makes, it's hard to describe in words. It's really hard to describe. There was a little tiny bit of a semblance of a bass slam, but not much. And there was no bass below the kick drum. Whereas as soon as I switched over to the Klipschorns, I could hear Sting's bass guitar. I could hear notes that I could not hear through the HPMs, and I could hear them with accuracy and resolution. Accuracy and resolution on the Klipschorns, and Stewart's cymbals were just, they were there. Okay, the HPMs can reproduce them, but they were just unresolved, veiled, and just veiled and unresolved is the best way I can put it. And maybe I could sense a distortion, not in a sense that there's anything wrong with the cones, just in the sense that this is a mid-fi speaker. Or just using old technology. This is a cone tweeter. Whereas when I switched to the Klipschorns, wow. The whole presentation, the whole song just sounded three-dimensional, dynamic. Everything jumped right out. It sounded just fantastic. So when you're doing these A-B comparisons, wow, I loved it. I couldn't live with the HPMs as my primary speaker. I could not. I love having them. They're a piece of history. But, and for all the reasons I'd mentioned before, but they would not be a primary speaker. They're not hi-fi. Not at all. I mentioned before I wanted them for other reasons, but nevertheless, I am a little disappointed in how they sound. They're not good. I've listened to them for the last couple of nights. I've enjoyed them. I've enjoyed listening to them because they're a piece of history. They're a speaker I always wanted, and they're not that fatiguing. I can listen to music through them, but boy, when you compare them to the Klipschorns, all their flaws really jump out at you. You really see what you're missing. The poor HPMs got pummeled tonight. So what I'm going to do is I want to finish this up by giving you a sample, A-B, of that Mark Knopfler song, What It Is. I can tell you from the previous, the best way that I've ever found to give you samples of what speakers sound like is using my near-field recording technique that I've made videos about, and I don't have time to do that right now, and I certainly can't do that with the Klipschorns. They just can't be moved that easily. So I'm going to give you an A-B from my listening position right here, but I can tell you, you really have no idea. I mean, you have no idea. You cannot tell how, you really can't tell what these speakers sound like from the A-B from my listening position using the Sony voice recorder. You cannot tell how much better the Klipschorn sound. You really can't. And the bass, for whatever reason, the bass of these Klipschorns is so resolved and deep, and it sounds so good with my ears, but when I record it, it just sounds like a garbled mess. And that's just artifacts of the mics, artifacts of where it's sitting in the room, and artifacts of the fact that those mics are omnidirectional and our ears are not. There are many reasons for that, but I cannot correct for that right now. So you're just going to get what you get, but know that when you're listening to the ABs, it just does not reflect what these speakers actually, the differences between these speakers. I'm just giving it to you so you can get some idea, maybe. And some of you might actually go, whoa, wow, those Pioneers actually sound better than the Klipschorns, and maybe it might come across that way. It's just artifacts making it sound that way. Honest to God, there's not a single person that has half a neuron left in their ear that would believe these Pioneers sound better than the HPMs. I'm afraid it might come across that way just because of the way it's recorded. I'm just trying to emphasize that, but I'm going to give you sound samples anyway. Okay? That's the kind of guy I am. I'll derive a line. I'll derive an equation for a line for you, and I'll give you sound samples too. So here we go. I'm going to set this up with my omnidirectional mic and go back and forth on What It Is by Mark Knopfler, and just to give you some samples, and I will end with that. I'll see you next time. I believe for fight number 3 I'd like to go directly now. I don't even think, knowing how pummeled these HPMs, what a pummeling they took tonight, why would I even want to bother with the Minimus 5s, honestly? I said earlier, I'm not trying to make a mockery of this process. I'm trying to make light of the fact that I made a big mistake by purchasing the Klipschorns. And, you know, and I'm trying to discover what I don't like about them through this process. I'm trying to discover what a value they actually are by comparing them to the speakers I already own and the relative prices and all that. And I'm doing it through an analogy to fights. It's kind of fun, it's enjoyable, it's just the way I chose to do it. And I'm not trying to make a mockery of it at the same time either. It's just fun. And my subscribers get that, I believe. But I don't believe that entering the Minimus 5s into this would get us anywhere. So I think, unless you guys really want me to do the Minimus 5s, I think I want to skip right over them, and let's get to something that's more informative. Let's go right to the JBLs. Sweet JBL 4655s. I give the nickname Sweet because the mid-range on that is sweet. So it's going to be a battle between, and the JBLs, again, those JBLs, turn this around so you can get a look at them if you haven't already seen them in one of my previous videos. There they are. They're JBL professional speakers. I fixed them in a previous video, and they probably only go down to about 50 hertz, if that. There's no deep bass, so they will get the benefit of a subwoofer to compete with Butterbean. The mid-range are some of the best, just the most enjoyable, best horn mid-range I've ever heard. But it's hurting in the high, it's hurting in the treble. It's not resolving in the treble. The hi-hats and the upper treble and the upper registers of the voice and all that. It's just, these speakers weren't designed for that, unfortunately. These speakers, I believe, were designed to be surround speakers to reinforce the voice, the critical voice areas in the theater, perhaps, something like that. So they're going to be at a disadvantage. Boy, if these speakers were reinforced with a good horn tweeter, wow, they would be incredible. I'm telling you. But nevertheless, they're going to compete with the advantage of a subwoofer, and we're going to just see how it pans out. All right. So I'm going to start giving you the sound sample now. The next competition, Fight 3, will be JBL, Sweet JBL 4655 versus Butterbean Klipschorn. Thanks for watching. Ciao. Here's your sound samples.
glasses fall about and I crackling in the air. Then around the dungeon doors, the shutters and the queues. Everybody's looking for somebody's arms to fall into. That's what it is. That's what it is now. Here's frost on the graves and the monuments, but the town is a warm in town. People curse the government and shovel hard food down. Lights are out in City Hall, the castle and the keep. The moon shines down upon it all, the legless and the sleepless. Cold on the toll gate, where the wagons creeping through. Cold on the toll gate, God knows what I can do. That's what it is. It's what it is now. The Gavison streets in the citadel with the ghosts of the ancient stones. High on the parapet, the Scottish piper stands alone. High on the wind, the Highland roads begin to roll. Something from the past just comes and stares into my soul.